Greetings, and welcome to LA Quill. Today we're diving into part 1 of chapter 20 of Arianna's tale. Arianna was sitting in the gardens reading a book, curled up at the base of a great oak tree where the branches and leaves hid her from view. For the first time in days, she felt a quiet sort of peace. Since her conversation with Damuk, she no longer had to worry about being constantly sought out, questioned, or watched. She had asked for space, and had been given it. That alone felt like a victory. She had been surprised by how much had changed, and by how little. Damuk had kept his word. He had promised to try to contact her brother, and he had given her the freedom she'd asked for. In return, she had stopped trying to escape, and perhaps more importantly, had stopped being angry with him all the time. Now, she thought with a faint smile, I'm only angry when he deserves it. She stifled a giggle. Of course, there's still some debate over what deserve it actually means. She hadn't forgiven him. Not for the rape, not for the kidnapping. Those things still lived inside her like splinters she could not remove. But she could set them aside, if only for a time. If only to carve out something that resembled happiness. She found herself spending more time in the great hall now. Dinner was almost always taken there, and sometimes the noon meal as well. She'd even broken her fast there that morning. That, more than anything else, had pleased Damuk, so much so that he had gifted her a circlet, small, delicate, set with emeralds, to match the necklace she already wore. If things continued like this, she thought, she would soon have the full set. She was beginning to understand that she enjoyed being treated like a princess. There were only two true problems left: Cybil and Ikon. Cybil had made it her personal mission to test Arianna's limits. The other woman had begun tossing sharp little comments her way, watching carefully to see which ones struck deepest. Yesterday she had gone further than usual. Before Arianna had even left the dining hall, Cybil had confronted her, loudly, deliberately, making certain that everyone would hear. She had called her a slut, a whore, and worse. Arianna's cheeks burned at the memory, but she had not remained silent. She didn't know many of the cruel words that Cybil seemed to wield so easily, but she had had enough. She had commented on Cybil's obvious attempts to appear younger than she was, on her clothing, far more revealing than necessary, and perhaps unwisely, on her parentage. Then she had fled. She had locked herself in the bedchamber she shared with Damuk and thrown herself on the bed to cry, sobbing so hard her body shook. Faylene had tried to coax her into opening the door, had pleaded and threatened in equal measure, but Arianna had ignored her. Damuk held the only key, aside from the one the Emperor had, and until he returned, no one could force their way inside. When Damuk had finally entered, he had found her still crying. It had taken time, more than she would have liked to admit, for him to calm her enough to speak, even longer to convince her that he was not angry. In fact, he had found the entire situation amusing. His father had not, but Damuk had reassured her. He was more angered by Cybil's behavior than by Arianna's response. He had suggested she apologize to the Emperor, not because she was wrong, but because it would elevate her standing in his eyes, and because, as Cybil's brother, the insult to her parentage might be taken poorly. Arianna had agreed. That evening, Cybil and her son had been absent from dinner. The Emperor had seen to that personally. For a few days, his sister would remain away from court, and her son, in protest, had chosen to remain away as well. No one on the dais had seemed to miss them. Arianna had offered her apology. The Emperor had accepted it, and that had been the end of it. Ikon, however, was another matter entirely. He made no effort to hide his intentions. Whenever he could, he tried to corner her, to isolate her, to make it clear that he believed she belonged in his bed, not his cousin's. Damuk had warned her not to be alone with him, and she took that warning seriously. She stayed within earshot of guards whenever possible. The guards, loyal to the crown prince, had intervened more than once. Most recently, only a few days ago, Ikon had not taken that well. Since then, Arianna had gone out of her way to avoid him. He made her skin crawl. She forced herself back into her book, trying to lose herself in its pages, but when the light began to fade, she realized how late it had become. Dinner would already be underway. She rose quickly. A bath, and then a tray brought to her room. That would be easier. As she stepped into the bedchamber, Faline immediately descended upon her. "There you are, child. We've been worried. It's been Candlemarks. Where have you been?" Arianna held up her book. "Reading. In the gardens." She set it carefully on the bed, already wishing she had more time with it, or that she read faster. She was trying, but scholarly pursuits had never come easily to her. Faline opened her mouth, clearly preparing to lecture. Arianna cut her off with a weary sigh. "Please, Faline, not now. I'm exhausted." The midwife hesitated, taking in the shadows beneath Arianna's eyes. Then, with visible reluctance, she relented. Orders were given, a bath was prepared, a tray was sent for, and Arianna was ushered gently into the bathing chamber. More than a candlemark later, she was half asleep with comfort. The heat of the water had soaked into her bones, easing tension she hadn't realized she carried. She didn't hear Damuk enter. He watched her for a moment, smiling faintly, before kneeling beside the tub and brushing a hand through her damp hair. Her eyes opened slowly. She smiled. "We missed you at dinner," he said, pressing a light kiss to her forehead. "I was reading," she replied as she rose from the tub. "I lost track of time." She allowed him to wrap her in a towel. "Faline will bring me something." In the bedchamber, she dressed quickly in one of the new nightgowns. Simple, modest, covering her completely. Damuk watched with quiet displeasure. He understood her discomfort with her changing body, but he found himself wishing she would hide less, not more. Still, he said nothing. Instead, he handed her a thick robe she wrapped around herself immediately. She turned toward the fire, intending to wait for her meal. Damuk caught her hand. She looked at him in surprise. "Come eat in the outer chamber," he said. "My father and I have matters to discuss. Some of them concern you." She hesitated. "Maybe I should dress first." He only shook his head. "It's only my father. He won't care, and you're more covered like this than you would be in a gown." She nodded, though uncertainty lingered. "What do you want to talk about?" He studied her for a moment, then asked, "How much do you know about the war between the Republic and the Empire?" "Not much," she admitted, slipping on her shoes. "Only what everyone knows, that whenever the king offers peace, the emperor refuses." "And do you know the terms of that peace?" Damuk's voice sharpened suddenly. She flinched. He saw it immediately and forced himself to calm. "I'm sorry," he said more gently. "It's not you." She took his hand anyway, and let him lead her. The emperor was waiting for them in the outer chamber. Seeing Arianna's exhaustion, he abandoned the desk and instead chose a seat near the fire where the warmth could reach her. Outside, the desert night had turned cold. Inside, the fire burned bright. Faline entered shortly after, setting down a tray of food with more force than necessary. Her disapproval was clear, but with the emperor present, she held her tongue. Damuk dismissed her. Arianna tried not to smile. Once she had eaten a few bites, Damuk began. "We'll start at the beginning," he said. "Try to bear with us." The emperor leaned back in his chair. "You've been taught that we are monsters," he said calmly. "Both sides teach their children what they wish them to believe. But here, in this room, you will hear the truth." Arianna said nothing, but she listened. The story began 600 years ago. Trade. Mountains once thought impassable, crossed by bridges crafted by imperial mages. The exchange of goods, metals for crops, wheat for survival. And then, tension, demands, escalation, until one day the empire severed the connection entirely. The bridges were abandoned. The barrier was created, a wall of pure magic stretching across the gully. Touch it, and you died. A pretty effective way to keep people out, Arianna said quietly. The Emperor nodded. Yes, but it did not end there. The King of the Republic, powerful in his own right, took offense and chose to retaliate, not with armies, but with something far worse. He took our water, the Emperor said. Arianna straightened, confusion replacing fatigue. How? There's no water in the desert. Damuk and the Emperor exchanged a glance. Arianna leaned forward, unease settling in her chest. And another thing, she said slowly. Why are mages more powerful here? And that's our tale from L.A. Quill today. If you enjoyed this chapter, let me know your favorite moment in the comments below. Until next time, may your stories always be magical.